presidential election in 2016 pitted Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton, former First Lady of New York, uh, Bill Clinton's wife, First Lady, against real estate tycoon Donald Trump, a man with no political experience, but somebody who wanted to sort of dissolve the political establishment, drain the swamp, as he put it. Um, and they appealed to people for various different reasons. Many people liked Hillary Clinton because they felt it was time for America to have our first woman president. Others really liked Donald Trump because he didn't come from the political establishment, therefore, he was incorruptible. He didn't need to raise money for a campaign, therefore, he didn't need to have political action committees because he had his own money to draw from. So people had various different reasons to support each candidate. But the 2016 election, outside of 2000's Gore Bush election, might have very well been the most contentious election in modern American history. Um, Donald Trump kind of shocked the world when he actually won the 2016 election. And he carried states that had traditionally gone blue. Many of these states voted for Obama twice, but they voted for Trump. And here's why. Donald Trump ran his campaign on the idea that he was going to make America great again and work to restrict various different policies that would send jobs offshore. He would bring manufacturing back, restore the idea of an America First policy. He reached out to people who felt like they had been left behind by the Democratic Party. So, traditionally, in the last century or so, people who have voted Democrat typically were the little guy. Union workers, middle class Americans, American common folk, just trying to get by for a living. Um, Oftentimes, you have blue collar workers who may be union workers or anything else of the sort, using their hands for a living, anything else of the sort. Traditionally, Democrats have supported this cause. They supported the idea of the little guy. Well, many of these blue collar types in the upper Midwest or so felt like they'd been left behind because the Democratic Party was shifting their idea of who the little guy was. Because it wasn't the blue collar worker anymore. It wasn't the pipe fitter in Union 53 or something of the sort. So, many of these folks in places like Michigan and Ohio, Wisconsin, who might have perhaps voted for a Democrat, believed in this idea that Donald Trump's going to fight for them and actually remember them. Hey, you've been forgotten. I'm going to fight for you. And it was enough for Donald Trump to carry those states and carry the Electoral College in 2016. Donald Trump is a brash New Yorker who is no nonsense. He's got a firebrand style. He likes to call out the media for being biased, and he's not afraid to say what's on his mind, and he's unabashed, and he lacks decorum, and he has this very brazen style that puts a lot of people off, and a lot of people say he's not presidential. He puts a lot of people off, and one of the things that Donald Trump sees is people are going to hate him anyway. I'm just going to say what I want to say. That's the way he sees it. And you have all sorts of media outlets who go off on Donald Trump, and late night TV hosts who basically have made a career out of telling Donald Trump jokes and things like that. Donald Trump seems kind of impervious to it. And if he is, he doesn't care because he's not there to be popular from the sense of doing what the media thinks he should do. He's doing what he feels he should do, which is what his supporters feel he should do. That's how Donald Trump looks at it. Whether or not the rest of us actually believe that is one thing, but that's how he looks at things. That's how he can say things like he could virtually murder somebody on Park Avenue, New York City, and get away with it and still win elections. It's like he's playing a game of cat and mouse almost, where he's saying something to get people talking about this over here. Gosh, can you believe what Donald Trump said today? and then something happens underneath. It's kind of that Sun Tzu Vietnam era Tet Offensive type movement. You go after Khe Sanh. They're talking about Khe Sanh. In the meantime, they're going after other American cities, things like that. Okay. Donald Trump has this country in a tizzy. He is the most controversial figure in American history, in modern times at least. Okay? His lovers, or his supporters, absolutely love the guy, and his detractors hate him more than the devil incarnate. it's There's very little in between. Either you love the guy or you hate his guts. And some of us try and give him the benefit of the doubt, but you just don't like him. And this is kind of good, but that's where we are. Okay. Donald Trump appealed to voters who typically voted conservative, but otherwise, he just feels like people are left behind. And he ran on the idea that he was going to repeal Obamacare. He was going to undo some of the financial constraints of the federal government. He was going to reduce taxes for corporations and for all Americans. And he was going to restore the idea of faith in American manufacturing. Okay. Well, early into his presidency, there had been long rumored accusations that he collaborated with the Russians to maybe influence the election result. And when various different folks would investigate, he would have them fired and so on and so on. Whether or not Donald Trump colluded with the Russian government to influence the presidential election is going to be debated into perpetuity. He wouldn't be the first to have an influence, but under the same token, no, there hasn't been anything officially proven, so who knows? Otherwise, though, Donald Trump had an impeachment repeal, an impeachment that actually was failed not that long ago. Withholding evidence and all kinds of things. The Democrats ran a campaign to try and get Donald Trump impeached, and it was never going to be fruitful. It was just all pretty much for show, and it wasted a bunch of time. Okay? Like Trump or not, they could have focused on something else, like maybe putting a better candidate out there. Otherwise, though, Donald Trump has had many, many mixed results in making America great again, because not all of his initiatives have come to fruition as he has promised. He is going to run for re-election here in a few months in the November presidential election. Joe Biden is going to be his opponent. So if you're watching this in the future, you know the outcome. Those of us in May 2020 don't know the outcome. If I were a betting man, I'd probably say that Donald Trump's going to win re-election. Unless there's something catastrophic that happens between now and November outside of this whole coronavirus situation. That's going to throw a whole monkey wrench into everything. Is Joe Biden going to inspire enough confidence in the American people, and do people hate Donald Trump enough to put enough votes to oust him? Or is Donald Trump going to garner enough support and be cooperative enough with Democrats for various different stimulus in order to restart this economy and win his bid for re-election? That's going to be seen coming up here soon. But otherwise, though, America has an exceptionally divided political recourse. I've never seen... America has been staunchly divided at various different times throughout our history. This is one of those times where it's been as bad as ever. Okay? Maybe this coronavirus situation can hopefully bring out some sort of political unity. We're all in this together. You have Republicans and Democrats both talking about stimulus packages that need to be passed to get money into the hands of the American people, get the economy restarted. So There's talk, and there are politicians that are at least talking to each other for many of the same reasons. They got to hash out some of the fine details. But otherwise, though, our country is very divided. And if there's any one thing that this pandemic situation can hopefully alleviate, it's the idea that maybe we can somehow restore the idea that we're all more similar than most people think. There are other times in recent history where unity was not a problem. We'll talk about that here in a few slides. But otherwise, the Donald Trump presidency continues, and we will see what happens in November with his possible re-election bid.